going to be having a special feature now. This will be about happiness and the variations that we experience in life.
One of the key thoughts implied by John Stuart Mill is that the responsibility for happiness rests solely upon ourselves. Whether it's through keeping one's senses open to the delights that are always nearby, or taking time to recreate oneself, we are responsible for what we think and are therefore responsible for how we feel. What happens when people put off being happy until some future condition is reached? What is the best way in which to experience our own discontent? The fact is that everything we need to be happy is present in our lives at all times, no matter what our temporary circumstances. Rather than searching, we need only forget ourselves and become participants in the drama of human existence. As the philosopher William James said so aptly, believe that life is worth living, and your belief will create the fact.
Have you noticed how most people seem to be waiting to be happy in the future? They seem to be so intent on getting through the day, they forget to enjoy it. It's as though happiness is a distant city to them, a city they're striving to reach. But happiness is something that must be learned and practiced if we're to become skilled at it. Pushing it out into the indeterminate future involves running the risk that we won't know how to be happy when we get there. It's like saying, someday when I can afford to buy a piano, I'll sit down and play beautiful music. It doesn't work that way. Owning a piano doesn't confer the knowledge of how to play, and arriving at a particular stage of life, whether it's measured in terms of age or income, doesn't mean that we'll suddenly become happy people. A reporter interviewing J. Paul Getty, who could at that time have cashed in his chips for several $1 billion, asked, "Mr. Getty, what is it that money cannot buy?" And he replied, "I don't think it can buy health, and I don't think it can buy a good time. Some of the best times I ever had didn't cost me any money." The fact is that most of the ingredients necessary for happiness are present in the lives of most people every day. They're things and conditions for which we need not wait. They're ours today, and most of them are things we're so used to, we take them for granted. They're the people with whom we live and work, our children, our homes. There's the anticipation of the day and what it will bring. The opportunity to work well and honestly so that we can take pride and satisfaction from it and by so doing enjoy our leisure and our rest. There's the happiness that should come from being with our friends and our neighbors, and the thoughtful person finds happiness in just being alive. He enjoys walking on a sunny day, but he likes to walk in the rain too. He can find happiness from the sound of the surf or the crackling of a fire. Abraham Lincoln said that people are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. And that seems to be it, the making up of the mind. Happy people are happy most of the time, and it must be because they just made up their minds that the alternative doesn't hold much hope or fun. If a person must wait until something happens to him to make him happy, he's not going to get much fun out of life. Happiness should not be just the reaction to an outside stimulus. Rather, it should be a state of mind, a regular condition that will fail at times because of unfavorable outside stimulus. Now, when you practically tear your little toe off walking barefoot through a darkened room, you're not going to be the happiest person in the neighborhood for the next 10 minutes. Life is full of things that can cause our happiness, our sense of well-being, to evaporate for a while. Knowing that sorrow and disappointment are natural and inevitable conditions of life, let's let them be the stimuli to break our happiness, rather than leaving it the other way around, the way so many seem to have it. So, be happy now.
A person can go a long way toward alleviating and understanding his discontent if he will understand the perverse nature of the human being. When a person works too hard or just works for a long, steady time, he becomes discontented and wants rest and relaxation. When he relaxes too long, he seeks work. When he's around too many people for too long, he longs for solitude. When he's alone too long, he longs for human companionship. The young envy the older person and long for the years to quickly pass. The older envy the young and often wish they could somehow turn back the clock of time. You'll be a lot happier and have a much better sense of humor if you'll understand that it's an integral and indissoluble part of human nature to become dissatisfied, to want what you don't have at the moment. Moments of complete and blissful satisfaction are wonderful but rare, and soon give way to a nagging desire for something else. And that's good. If we understand this part of ourselves, we can avoid frustration. It is this godlike discontent that lurks in the growing person that's responsible for all human progress. That our discontent is also responsible for a great deal of pain and unnecessary suffering is simply the other side of the coin. Do you remember the old fable about the fisherman who caught a magic prince in the form of a fish? And the fish told the fisherman that if he let him go, the fish would grant any wish. The fisherman let him go, talked it over with his wife, and they started wishing. Each time their wish was granted, they'd then wish for something greater. Finally, they lived in a great, gleaming castle with hundreds of servants. But it wasn't enough. The wife wanted then to control the sun, to make it obedient to her whim. And when the fisherman asked for this wish, the finny prince was disgusted and took away everything. They were once again in the simple shack. Like so many old fables, it's a commentary on human nature, and it comes uncomfortably close to the truth. We say, if only I had such and such, I'd be completely happy for the rest of my life. It isn't true. As soon as we have such and such for a while, a surprisingly short while, we then want something else. Discontent comes with the territory. It comes with being human. Are you discontented? If you are, that's good. That's why we're not still squatting in a filthy, drafty cave and grunting and scratching. Divine discontent, to understand it, is to use it properly.
Let me give you some tips on how to be miserable. And don't laugh. There are literally millions of people who wouldn't trade their daily misery for all the gold in the world. You may know some of them. In fact, if you know 10 people, you probably know several of them. This may be an exaggeration, and it may not, too. The first step to real professional-type, solid, unremitting misery is to get all wrapped up in yourself and your problems, real or imagined. Become a kind of island, surrounded on every side by yourself. By turning all of your thoughts inward upon yourself, you can naturally not spend much or any time thinking of others and other things. And so finally the outside world, the real world, will disappear into a kind of Hitchcock-type fog. You'll know the world is there because every once in a while you'll bump into it. But for the most part it will be murky and indistinguishable. And it's right here that you have to understand an important but little-known fact. The type of person who turns inward upon himself doesn't have much in the wisdom department, or he'd never do it. And as a result, he doesn't have much to turn inward upon. He finds a kind of vacuum. So he must then invent things. And he invents things like, the world is against him, which is the worst possible kind of conceit. The world isn't against him, it doesn't even know he exists. And as a result, it ignores him completely. So since this person doesn't get much attention from this attitude, he tries to get attention through various other means. One is to hunt for illnesses of various kinds. If you look long enough, and it doesn't take long, you can find symptoms of any condition or disease known to man, and some that are unknown, ranging from yaws to rabies. With your newfound illness, you've got something with which you hope to make everyone else as miserable as you are. So you tell them about it. They don't want to hear about it, but you tell them anyway, and you watch for signs of sympathy. And at first you get them. So you think you've got it made, and you keep this up, with new and interesting medical problems. You wake up every morning feeling rotten, and you let the world know about it. But soon you detect a change. People begin to walk away as you approach. They don't want to hear your deadly recitation anymore. Even your family turns an uninterested deaf ear to your protestations of being on the brink of a slow and painful death. Well, this makes you angry. So childlike, you cry out that nobody cares whether you live or die, and by this time you're pretty close to the truth. So the bitterness deepens, the misery thickens, and you draw farther and farther back into your cave, shouting imprecations at the world, throwing an occasional stone at a passerby, and in general, making a complete ass of yourself. Well, there you have it. One of the best and most common formulas for being miserable, and making those around you miserable as well. And it all starts with becoming too wrapped up in yourself, feeling that you're important somehow. Samuel Johnson wrote, "Many of our miseries are merely comparative. We're often made unhappy not by the presence of any real evil, but by the absence of some fictitious good." And a Hindu proverb says, "The miserable are very talkative." And they are, aren't they?
As we have heard, when we become too involved with ourselves, we drive happiness away rather than drawing it to us. Happiness comes more from forgetting ourselves during the pursuit of a goal than when it is sought for its own sake. Dr. Ashley Montague said it very well with this statement: "It is not the pursuit of happiness, but rather that happiness of pursuit that is most likely to yield the greatest gratification." When you continue, you'll discover the meaning of the master word, as well as other ideas on happiness.
We are in control of our own destiny. We can make ourselves happy by the way we think, the things we do, the people we associate with, and most of all, understanding ourselves. Unfortunately, a lot of us as humans do not understand ourselves. This is one of the reasons why majority of our days tends to have a color that we do not appreciate. We can make it gold, we can make it green, we can make it bright. And on that note, we'll take our classical corner, and we'll be back shortly.
Classical Corner. Classical Corner.
Our classical piece this evening was Ormsk by, that's Dovak Ormsk actually, and that was by the London Promenade Orchestra. We'll now be taking a short break. We'll be back with you momentarily.